Hi, today's Thursday. It's the 23rd of April. My name's Adam Hebener. I'm the CEO of Modern Mortgage, and this is today's Modern Minute. And guys, I know by now you've already seen some of the headlines that are coming your way. It's all filled with numbers like the price of oil and what's happening on the stock market and the number of cases, and probably most sadly, the number of unemployment claims. If you add them all together, today's claims plus what we had previously, you're going to find somewhere total unemployment is around 32 million. That's 20% of America's workforce, according to my calculation. And it's bad news. It's sad. It's serious. And I'm coming to you now because what I want to do is just share with you some of the tools that you can use to continue to interpret this process. There's still this big kind of debate between the two narratives. The one narrative that we've introduced to you that wants to kind of protect the status quo, and I think those are good folks who mean well and are working hard to try to protect the status quo. And I think other folks who might be a little bit more, realistic, or a little bit less engaged in a narrative and just simply responding to the numbers. As you guys know, that's the crew or the story, the narrative that I like to call the big shift. If you've been following what we do, you know I've been trying to convince you of the big shift, convince you of the idea that the moment of history that we currently occupy requires that the status quo be upended, be changed in significant ways. And that's scary. And so folks are working hard to protect the status quo. And I think they mean well, and I think they should be given our utmost respect and deference insofar as we can. And yet, as we walk through this process, at least in our community, I want to make sure that you guys are equipped to be thinking differently about what's changing so that you're not sucked into kind of some of the wrong ideas that might encourage you to behave in the wrong way. I'll give you some examples. Probably the most palpable is this kind of idea of a V-shaped recovery or a U-shaped recovery, or some major politicians and, in fact, economists are even still questioning if we're in a recession, certainly not considering the idea that we could potentially be in a depression. And they're talking about recovery. Here's a kind of gift I want to give you as you're walking through all of these various stories, narratives, numbers that are going to be coming your way. Every time somebody presents to you, whether it's somebody on television or somebody you know, presents to you an idea that comes to some conclusion, let me give you this gift, this tool that you can use, and hopefully you're already using it. But I want to reinforce it and draw attention to it. It's the gift of why. Anytime somebody says, makes some claim to you, we're going to have a V-shaped recovery, make sure you can ask them the question, why do you believe that will happen? And that the answer they give you is a good, strong answer. Let me give you an example. There are many who are saying this is not a big deal. We're going to have a V-shaped recovery. There's all kinds of pent-up demand and green shoots and all kinds of various ways to describe this. You have to ask them why. Why do you think we'll have recovery? Immediately, their answer will likely be something like, well, the economy was strong before this happened. This is only happening because people are staying home now. And as soon as people are not staying home, this will go back to normal. Here's why I want to tell you I don't think that's the case. And I want to give you my why as to why I believe the world is changing now. The world is changing because the way the world currently operates, and has always operated, is on the basis of agreements that we make with one another. Those agreements often are unspoken and are ultimately based on behavior. One of those behaviors might be just the agreement that we have that the U.S. government can print money. Why can they print money? Well, they can print money because we all in the United States and the rest of the globe says they can. So because we say they can, they can. And that's done by agreement. And I'm glad for that agreement. I'm glad it's in place. It's done some good things throughout history, but it's also done some bad things throughout history. It is appropriate for us to be printing money now, but it isn't necessarily going to be the answer to the questions we need. And that is because behaviors, that is agreements, are changing. Let me give you an example. I went through a whole bunch of records today, finding surveys and studies from the Pew Research company and other folks who are just kind of plumbing the depths of what consumers and just regular Americans feel about things. They asked them a couple of questions. One of the questions was, would you return to a restaurant? Well, the answer was 71% said no, they would not return to a restaurant. What about an airplane? Would you get on an airplane? 85% said they would not get on an airplane. Would you go to a large gathering like a church or a sporting event? 87% said they would not do that right now. Now, those are changes in behavior. Those changes in behavior tend to come with all kinds of other changes in behavior. And you have to understand this. They're motivated by value shifts. Now, what value shift would motivate everybody to stay out of those large gatherings? Well, simply their own physical health. Whether you agree with their health being a problem, being in danger or not, doesn't really matter. All that really matters is 71, 85, and 87% respectively of folks do feel that they don't want to be involved in an activity that might compromise their health. Because they believe that, their behaviors will follow, and because their behaviors will follow, the economic agreements we have between one another, with our government with the world, are all changing. Now again, in those periods of changing, that's scary. Lots of turmoil comes with that, lots of fear, because everybody wants to protect their piece of the status quo. And I completely understand that. I resonated. I feel it myself. And yet, as we move into a new era where the rules are changing, the values will be different, there's a really, really valuable practice you can adopt as you're walking over this bridge that we talk so often about. That value would be simply to start with the question, why? And then, as we talked about yesterday, be willing to step away from the secondary identities. Step out of politics for a while. Step out of race for a while. And instead, just have that greater identity of an American, of a human, of a moral individual, a free moral agent. These are the kinds of things that you should be resonating with the most, because it allows you to kind of watch what's happening in front of you as much as possible a removed observer. Those removed observers, those ones who are not letting themselves have a dog in the fight, have the ability to make the best decisions and take advantage of rule changes. When agreements change, some of the old agreements get lost, but new agreements are made. You're hearing a lot right now about things like the Great Depression and crashes, and some of that you're hearing from me, and I think that's a good thing for you to be hearing. But don't forget that after each one of those periods was a predictable period as well. After the Civil War and the Panic of 1857 I've shared with you, after the Great Depression and World War II, after those periods, America had remarkable periods of hope and expansion where most of what we ever did as a people, we did then. I'll give you some examples. Coming out of the Civil War, we took hammers and shovels and picks and iron. All the races came together. All the political parties came together. And we used hand tools to build railroads from coast to coast. We built the Transcontinental Railroad. That made America what it was coming into the Industrial Revolution and the explosion of the early 19th century. If we didn't do that by hand, which was a remarkable opportunity, if we didn't invent the steam engine, if all the economic development that came from that, we would not be what we are today. Think again, even after World War II, we came home. We figured out the second industrial revolution. We went to the moon before we built an internet. That's who we really are, and that's what we're headed to. But the people who get to take advantage of that the most are the ones who, rather than investing their time and fortune and emotion in the status quo, are willing to step back, observe the world for what it is, a changing entity, and start to learn the new rules early. Deal with the emotions now, mourn it now, and then get busy with hope. Because it's time to start thinking about the new rules. So, what do you want to be when you grow up? Who are you going to become? It's time to be that now. I'm looking forward to being that with you. I'm excited to walk this road. As always, guys, like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep getting the word out there and making sure we're taking care of as many people as we can. As always, thanks for being with me, and I hope you have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.